Yeah, you're not ready?
Zipper?
Yeah, no zipper bags. $2 a bag.
Thank God. I don't know what I was going to do.
Fully labeled.
Talk about your family again. They did that once.
Pardon me?
Talk about your family once, your dad, and your history of politics.
Oh, I gotta just do a backup plan that I have.
You know, we all need one like that. We all need one opening just to,
Jake, or didn't he have like a devotional book or some sort of book in his drawer that he would quickly pull out?
Yep.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome and thank you for coming. And at this time, I would like to give the opening to Councillor Jake Hiebert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wrote my opening a couple of days ago, and it probably would have been slightly more appropriate if I would have presented it at that time. The heading, Fall, the greatest time of year. What a beautiful time of year, maybe the best of the 4 seasons. Personally, it's my favorite time of the year. If you think of it too much, you realize that it's closely followed by winter. A month ago, the last part of summer, I spent cleaning my garden. The carrots and the onions were the best I'd ever managed to grow. The cucumber plants were 3 feet tall, deep green with tons of flowers, but limited in productivity. The tomatoes were well below average, and similar were the beans. The apple tree had 2 apples 2 years ago, had 4 apples last year, and had 300 apples this year. Overall, a very good year for produce and a garden I was proud of. As I cleaned the garden a couple of weeks ago, I also noticed that the farmers were harvesting wheat, oats, and their corn silage. Now that fall has arrived, the farmers have completed harvesting those, and now they're harvesting beans and combining the corn. Wasn't it only yesterday that farmers were seeding and planting? Maybe it's this age I'm at, that life speeds by. Fall is great because we have Thanksgiving events, although smaller gatherings than in other years. It's a great time to see and visit with friends, children, and grandchildren. Oh, then there's all that great food, including various types of potato salads, turkey, ham, and salads of all types and colors. And oh yeah, pumpkin pie complete with whipped cream. As we wait for grace to be said, so that we can start to indulge, we continue the tradition of saying what we are thankful for. As we go around the circle, my lovely 93-year-old matriarch mother-in-law speaks the longest, and the 3-year-old grandchild has 4 words of thanks. Everyone else is in between. Common to most during Thanksgiving is that each of us is thankful for each other, and we're thankful for good health. This year, due to circumstances around me, I was broken for the less fortunate. 2 weeks ago, we acknowledged Mental Health Week. I thought about those suffering from various forms of that disease, symptoms, and how it manifests itself and subsequently in the family and close friends. When suffering and being depressed, many turn to legal and illegal drugs, both of which have serious consequences. 10 days ago, a 31-year-old young man ended his life. This great individual played baseball for me 20 years ago and then followed my steps as a hockey referee. A second young man, a relative, 34 years of age, also died due to choices and actions of his own. A brilliant youth who had an impressive curriculum vitae and who could have accomplished anything he set his mind to. How do family members and close friends wrap their thoughts and emotions around such events while the rest of us are celebrating? Do they celebrate the memories of their loved ones? And is that enough? As I wrestled between my family all being healthy and, on the other hand, those who are suffering, I truly realized that mental health and drug addiction are real. In conclusion, I question how I celebrate this time of year when I think of such events, including my neighbor who just lost his wife. For those of us who have hope and faith and believe in a life hereafter, we can have solace in the fact that God is alive, He loves us, He is aware of what is happening, He has an in-depth relief plan, which will be followed by a season we have not previously experienced. A season that is much more exciting, lasts longer, and will not have anguish and sorrows. In that season and in that place, the garden produce is going to be lush, the crops will be greater, the colors on the leaves on the trees will be more indescribable, and at my age, I look forward to no more aches and pains. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hiebert. Council, we have the agenda in front of us. We're looking for a motion to adopt, but just before we do, I would like to add under number 9, add F, that would be the bylaw 2158, the Code of Conduct, which was the additional information in your mailboxes. Okay, so once those changes, that change is made, looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Schweitzer, second by Councillor Hiebert. Any comments? Okay, we'll call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. We have the minutes of October 6, 2020, the regular council meeting. They start on page 1. Council, we're looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Hiebert, second by Councillor Stevens. Any comments?
No comments.
Okay. Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to number 6. It's just a little after 7:35. So we'll move to 6A, which is the Conditional Use 2020-05, 129 Kroeker Avenue and 510 Wilson Street. It starts on page 3 of your agenda. And right now, we will close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Workentine, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is the first of 3 similar conditional use applications that have been filed for 3 separate personal care homes in Steinbach. So I may start sounding redundant after the 3rd one. But because they are separate properties, they are dealt with as separate files. For this particular file, Conditional Use File CU-2020-05 for 299 Kroeker Avenue. The owner of the property is Rest Haven Nursing Home of Steinbach, Inc., with the applicant for the conditional use being Neil Krawchuk, PCL Constructors, Inc. Purpose of the application is to allow an existing building to be brought into the city of Steinbach. The applicant is applying to bring in a building to be used as a visitation shelter, and this is as per recent announcements by the province of Manitoba. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. There is no correspondence on file. Recommendation from administration is that this application be approved.
Thank you. The applicant is not in attendance tonight?
I'm not aware, but I don't believe so.
No? Okay. Okay, is there anyone here wanting to have questions answered or objections towards this file? Okay. I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone here with questions or having objections to this file? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Schweitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will make the motion to approve the conditional use.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor Siemens? Go ahead, Councillor Schweitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is basically the reason we have this conditional use hearing is because of the fact that our bylaws require that if an organization is going to bring in an existing building into the city and use it for any purpose, then it has to get approval from council, a conditional use. In this case here, it's quite clear what this is being used for. This would be used as a visitation shelter. In this case, on this particular property, for Cedarwood residents to visit family members, and it'd be basically fabricated from a metal shipping container, and then it'll go on a proper foundation. It'll meet all the code requirements and such. The fact is that this is initiated by the province. This is province-wide. This is happening. It obviously makes sense to follow the lead of the province on this, and because of the unique circumstances of COVID-19, we obviously want our seniors to be able to have visitors, and so this is a creative way to enable indoor visitation during our very cold winter months, and I think it's good that the province is making this possible, and I think we should facilitate it.
Thank you. Anything further?
Nothing further.
Any further of council? Anything in closing?
No.
Well, Councillor Schweitzer has done a great job of speaking to this, conditional use, so I will just ask for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. We will now move to 6B. This is Conditional Use CU-2020-06, Reed 98 Henry Street. Starts on page 14 of our agenda. At this time, we will close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Worthing, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, similar to the last application, file CU-2020-06 for 298 Henry Street. Applicant is being made, or the owner of the property, I'm sorry, is Southern Health Sante Sud. The applicant for the conditional use is Neil Kroeker, PCL Constructors, Inc. And this application is to also allow an existing building to be brought into the city of Steinbach, with the building to be used as a visitation shelter. And this is for Bethesda Personal Care Home in Steinbach. Again, the file application is similar, structure is similar, recommendation is to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Worthing. As we've discovered before, the applicant is not here today, so we're opening it up for questions or objections to this file. Is there anyone here with a question or objection? I will ask one more time. Is there anyone here with questions to this file or an objection? Okay, at this time, we will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed?
Motion to approve?
Okay, and seconded by, okay. Motion approved by Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Hiebert. Go ahead, Councillor Penner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As with the previous file, this is a conditional use for a visitation shelter. And while there are restrictions that are put in place by the province, they are coming up with solutions as well to help with that. So we want to carry that along and make sure that we're getting visitors to our senior citizens over our long winters.
Anything further? Anything further of council? Anything in closing?
Nothing further.
Okay. We'll call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, council will move to 6C. This is Conditional Use 2020-07. This is referring to 185 Woodhaven Avenue. It starts on page 25 of our agenda package. At this time, we will close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Worthing, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This application for conditional use file CU-2020-07 for 185 Woodhaven Avenue. Owner of the property is Resthaven Nursing Home of Steinbach, Inc., with the applicant for the conditional use being Neil Kroeker, PCL Constructors, Inc. Purpose of the application is to allow an existing building to be brought into the city of Steinbach, with the applicant seeking to use the building as a visitation shelter. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. There's no written correspondence on file. Recommendation from administration is that council approve the application.
Thank you, Mr. Worthing. Once again, the applicant is not here today, so we'll open it up for questions or objections from the, come ahead. Just state your name and your address, please.
Hi there. My name's Timothy McAllister. I live at 121 Giesbrecht Street. And my question today is just if I could get more details about what the plan is, where the shelter will be put up, some of those details.
Okay, we do, Mr. Worthing, you do have pictures of where this will be going?
That's correct. There is that information on file in council's agenda package, appears on pages 33 and 34. We will bring that up on screen in a moment. There is one broad overview page, and then there is a detail page. But generally, the location of the visitation shelter that has been applied for this particular property will appear next to the main entrance, it will appear on an existing wing that will be accessed from the existing primary parking lot for the personal care home. If you could please roll it back to the general And if you can, just pass me the mouse. Thank you. On this particular sketch, the actual shelter itself is intended to generally be located in this location. And if you move into the next sketch, it shows a more detailed version of the existing extent of the existing personal care home, the approximate location of where the actual shelter will be, complete with showing the connection to the existing structure, as well as the access for the general public to be able to enter the proposed shelter.
Mr. Workman, can you go back to the general?
Sure.
Okay, so giving its placement and giving the, like all the shrubbery around it, it'll be reasonably hidden from the street.
All that shrubbery is cut down with the new expansion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does that answer?
It does. I guess I have a few follow-up questions. Well, first, I think it's awesome that this is happening. I've been emailing our MLA asking for this type of thing, and that's excellent. So it's really cool. I'm just wondering what the time frame for this being in place will be.
Okay, I'll direct that question also to Mr. Workentine.
My understanding from documentation that was presented by the province several weeks ago is they intend to have the visitation shelters hopefully operational sometime in November.
And then how long will they be operational for?
That I am not aware of.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a difficult one because we don't know how long COVID will go on, but
Totally.
they'll be there for the duration of the COVID.
Okay. I guess I have a question for council. How does this application line up with some of the bylaws around metal structures and additional landscaping that's required and conditional use, time limitations on metal shipping containers in use in different locations, that kind of thing?
Well, it will be temporary. It is, we're handling it as a temporary structure, but it's also being put on a proper foundation that we require for this kind of structure. And again, we don't know exactly how long, but we have to treat it as a temporary structure.
Okay. Because there's no end date, it doesn't really seem like a temporary structure.
Technically not, but
Yeah.
it still has to be treated that way because this won't, once COVID is
Yeah.
come to fruition, then we'll be removing them.
I guess, again, I'll just ask, the town has bylaws for good reason. How does this align with the bylaw for, well, I'm looking at the City of Steinbach zoning bylaw.
Okay, I will turn that over to Mr. Workentine.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, the requirement for existing structures to be moved into the city of Steinbach is permitted under the city's zoning bylaw. However, it does require a conditional use application to be approved. That is the purpose for the application council is considering tonight. Insofar as the building itself, although its origins are as a metal shipping container, according to documentation that has been provided to the city and at the direction of the provincial government, the particular structures and the related foundations will be compliant and will be installed pursuant to the requirements of the Manitoba Building Code. And that is the extent of the information that the city is using to evaluate its requirements for building permit and presentation to council tonight.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, just a few follow-up questions. In the bylaw, I don't know what section it is, but .110.1A says no metal shipping container shall be located in the front yard of any site. B says in the case of a corner site, which this is, no metal shipping container shall be located in the street-facing side yard. And then further down 110.2, if a metal shipping container is intended to be on a site for 90 or more days per calendar year, it should be placed on a solid foundation, which you've mentioned, that's excellent. It should be considered as an accessory use, so there's additional considerations there. And then when this shipping container abuts a lot containing residential use, this is in a residential neighborhood, it must be effectively screened from view from the residential use using an opaque fence.
Okay. Mr. Orgney, would you have a rebuttal for that?
I would, and it, just a moment while I bring up that particular section of the zoning bylaw. In respect of the metal shipping container, that particular section of the city's zoning bylaw, if metal shipping containers are being used for their original intended use as a shipping container, those conditions would apply. However, while the original design for this particular structure was a metal shipping container, it has been converted for use. Its use is not as storage or as a shipping container. As far as administration is viewing this file, it is being treated as a permanent structure. So its use is not considered to be a shipping container, but because of its converted use into a visitation shelter, it is being considered a different product.
So that's great, and because it's being considered as a permanent structure, I'm just questioning whether a metal shipping container is the right solution here.
Councillor Penner, you have a question?
Thank you. Through you to administration. Is it fair to say that because of the exceptional circumstances of COVID and this situation, that our city and also other municipalities, I guess, are essentially doing our best to accommodate what's being mandated by the provincial government?
I would say that would be a fair comment.
And so even it's a situation maybe where traditionally, as Mr. McAllister is suggesting, it wouldn't necessarily comply with what we would traditionally do. But given the situation of wanting our seniors to be able to visit their loved ones, us and other municipalities, it's not just us, are going to be making accommodations to allow that to happen?
Well, that's partially true. As I mentioned in my previous comment, is as far as administration is concerned, it isn't being treated as a shipping container as such. And as a result, our belief is that it is compliant with all other provisions of the city zoning bylaw, other than the requirement for the conditional use as a used building being moved into the city.
It just sounds like we're altering definitions for convenience sake, but there's no stipulation about use of a metal shipping container other than for storing things. On page 45, again, yeah, points 110.1 and 110.2, it's pretty clear about the requirements around the use of a metal shipping container in the Steinbach bylaw on zoning.
And once again, those are intended for storage, because that's what the shipping containers are intended for. Now, these shipping
It doesn't
containers-
say that there, though.
But the intent of the bylaw is there. And in most cases, shipping containers are used for storage. And in this case, these have been remodeled by the province. And this is their answer to give to municipalities and cities in order to have safe places to visit with their loved ones.
Totally. And, you know, again, I probably wouldn't come here if I wasn't unsure about the end being in sight for COVID-19, right? And the fact that administration thinks this is a permanent structure, but it's being applied for as a conditional use as a temporary structure, I'm just really uncomfortable as a rate-paying citizen living right across the street about the plan. I love the goal. I question the execution and the plan.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, go
Thank
ahead.
you, Mr. A question to Mr. McAllister. You're basically objecting to provincial policy. Have you contacted the provincial government with your concerns since this is their initiative and their directive?
I would have if I would have known the plan before today. It wasn't released in the package for the conditional use.
But the province, this is just a follow-up, but the province certainly had released and announced the plan pretty clearly in the news media about that, the visitation shelters and such.
Totally.
You're aware of that.
And visitation shelter can mean many different things. I'm pro-visitation shelter.
Okay.
But like Councillor Schweitzer has alluded to, probably about 6 weeks ago, maybe longer, there was quite a lengthy news story done on these, and they announced the money that was putting into it.
Yeah.
And that there was 103 going out throughout our province. And so now we're catching up with their.
Totally. I don't have TV, so I don't watch the news.
Oh, okay.
I get news through different channels. So I wasn't aware of the plan. And like I said, I would have known about this if it was shared 2 weeks ago in the package I received in the mail.
Okay. Okay, is there any further questions?
No, I just call on council to, work within the bylaws that we've set for good reason in this town. We have a beautiful town. We have beautiful people, and we have beautiful seniors. And I think there's a better way we can accomplish the right thing here for everyone.
Well, given what the province has put before us, I feel we've done the best we can do to work within those guidelines.
And then I feel let down by the town of Steinbach for not knowing about this plan before today.
Okay, then that's something we'll have to take up if communication's an issue, but I felt that we've communicated effectively.
Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here with questions or objections to this file? None? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Schweitzer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make the motion to approve the conditional use.
We have a seconder, second by Councillor Hiebert. Go ahead, Councillor Schweitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As our section 11.1 of the City of Steinbach zoning bylaw says, that in order to move essentially a structure within the city, it has to conform to regulations and such, and has to receive a conditional use pursuant to the Act. This does follow all of that. We are following our bylaws. And just to reiterate, this is a provincial directive that's being implemented by Southern Health. The province could come in and simply order that this go in. This is a visitation shelter. It is in response to a global pandemic to allow seniors to be able to continue to visit with their loved ones. There is no way that we are going to deny a visitation shelter right before winter comes and prevent seniors from visiting their loved ones, especially when this is a direct plan of the provincial government. So we absolutely should be approving the conditional use.
Anything further?
When I reviewed this file and when I noticed it was a visitation shelter, in my view, it was a visitation shelter that's made of metal. And I still am of the same opinion. It's a visitation shelter that happens to be made of metal. The purpose of it is not to store. It's a visitation center made of metal for people to visit.
Anything further, Council? Anything in closing?
No.
Okay, Council. We've heard all the comments, so we'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, Council, we will move on to 6D. This is Variance V-2020-24. This is referring to 435 PTH 12 North. It's on page 36 of our agenda package. At this time, I would like to close the the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Worthing, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this file, variance application, file V-2020-24, 435 PTH 12th North. The owner of the property is Steinbach Truck Services LTD, with the applicant for the variance being Wasco Contractors, Inc. Purpose of the application, City of Steinbach zoning bylaw 2100 requires the subject property to plant one deciduous or coniferous tree for 30 feet of street frontage, plus 3 shrubs for each 20 feet of street frontage. The applicant is requesting to not have to install any of the required plantings. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. There is no written correspondence on file. In respect of the application, it is a concern to administration, as firstly, it is a request that represents a 100% reduction from what is required, according to city zoning bylaw. The second and more concerning is, in our view, it would establish a precedent, should council decide to approve it, that relates to a development standard that is commonplace throughout the city. Therefore, administration recommendation is the application be denied.
Thank you, Mr. Worthing. Is the applicant here today? Okay. Is there anyone here, seeing the applicant's not here, is there anyone here that has questions or objections to this file? I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone here with questions or objections to this file? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed?
Could I ask a question of administration before we go to the question?
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in regards to other businesses along the highway that are in the same industry, are there plantings on those properties? I notice in the letter here, it says, at this time, no other business in this area has buffer plantings. Could you just confirm that and confirm what other businesses in the area are doing?
My recollection is the majority of PTH 12 North, especially in that section, is Zone C3. For businesses that have developed any of their properties since approximately 2010, when this particular requirement became standard within the city zoning bylaw, I believe all businesses have been required to install street edge landscaping. It may not be present because there may be developments that have occurred prior to that. Or alternatively, if there have been developments on sites in the area since 2010, my understanding is if there is no street edge landscaping in existence, it is due to an outstanding item related to the previous permit.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Siemens,
I make a motion to approve the variance.
do we have a seconder? Councillor Kenner? Go ahead, Councillor Siemens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there's a variety of different reasons. They're driving through that area of our community in the northeast along that road. It's a gravel road. It's got ditches on either side. We mowed the ditches. But in this case, they want to add an additional building. They need to do a drainage plan as part of it. Now they need to do street edge landscaping as well. I think that their reasoning is correct, and I agree with their reasoning. The city has reduced city services in that area, and for them to be now required to add trees in an area where others haven't in that area, there might be some outstanding development requirements in that area that I don't know about. They're not mentioned in the articles that was presented. I think, does it set a precedent? I think in that area, it continues a precedent that's been set there, is that there are no tree plantings in that area or street edge landscaping. So I do agree with the variance at this time that, and we should approve the variance.
Thank you. Anything further?
Yeah, if my understanding is correct, they want the variance because they want to display their product. So and for that reason, I don't agree that it sets a precedent. It's not just because they don't want to plant. It's because they have a product to display. So for that reason, I will support the motion.
Okay. Any further council? Councillors?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to speak against the motion, and for a number of reasons. First of all, we're hearing a lot of comments about, the reasons for the application, and all we've got to go on is what is written here because the applicant is not here. And this is a variance. This is a little different than a conditional use where it's the province that's initiating it. We're talking about a business here that wants to vary an existing bylaw, and they don't have someone here to answer questions and give reasoning. Because if they were here, I would, for example, be asking why in the city engineer report it states the applicant was made aware of the requirement early on in the project and submitted a plan indicating that they intended to do this work. So it's not like the way this is being talked about is this is a sudden new requirement that they all of a sudden are being faced with and they don't know what to do and they realize that this is a problem. They knew about this in the bylaw and had even submitted a plan to the city showing this is what we're planning to do. This has been a requirement in our bylaw since 2010, and I remember being on council in 2010 when we put this in, and the rationale is that trees and shrubs improves the aesthetics of the city. Yes, there aren't a lot of businesses along that section that have trees and shrubs, mainly because most of them were, of course, built before 2010. But obviously the purpose of this bylaw, the purpose of this requirement is to have more trees and shrubs. And if we start giving the exception every time someone says that, well, it interferes with the view or it might cause a snow fence, then we're basically going to say that, well, actually we don't want to have that requirement in there. In which case, then we should be having a discussion about the bylaw and changing the bylaw itself. Because here, basically what we're saying is that that all it takes to not have to put in the trees and shrubs is for a business to say, after they've already said they would do it, is to say, well, actually, it turns out that it doesn't work with the placement, it blocks some of our product. By that reasoning, then, we might as well say no commercial property actually has to put in trees and shrubs. And so we either have this requirement as a standard or we do not. And again, the applicant isn't here, which is unfortunate because this would be a very valid question about why did they submit a plan indicating that they were actually going to do this. So we have to look at all the information here, look at all the context, and so in this case, I think we need to deny.
Anything further, Council? Councillor Hiebert?
Further to what Councillor Schweikster said, if we go to the letter from Wasco, the second sentence in that letter, as part of the construction process, we submitted a lot drainage plan for the property, which included the planting of buffer trees on the front edge of the property. It wasn't something that the city forced them into. They submitted the drainage plan complete with the trees. They have agreed to it, and I agree with Councillor Schweikster that agreement is agreement.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor.
Obviously, councillors are free to vote how they want if they don't want to support this, but the rationale that they submitted the plan and that's that, I just personally don't agree with that logic because plans change all the time in a business, and if a business isn't allowed to evolve and adjust, like I agree it's unfortunate they weren't here, so we don't know what their rationale is, but business changes rapidly all the time. So to hold this is the plan and now that's it, I don't agree with that particular logic to base denial on.
Anything further, Council? Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I do agree with Councillor Penner's comments with regards to business plans change and evolve. They constantly do. However, there are still requirements that are required. Items that are put onto drainage lot plans, then you need to readjust and resubmit. I really was torn on this one coming into it, and I was really hoping that there would be a public hearing with somebody from the public to be able to talk to, because I wanted to maybe see if we could work in good faith, because I really truly do believe that is something that we should try and work with is in good faith, which I feel like they broke that opportunity when they submitted a plan and have not followed through with it. And I wanted to see if maybe there was something that could be worked out going forward. But seeing that they're not here to do that, I have no choice but to deny the motion put forward.
Anything further? Anything in closing?
Yes, sir. I agree with all the discussion. I think it is, I was part of that discussion in 2010 as well. And it has to do more so when we put bylaws into place for areas that are built up. They've got curb and gutter, they've got paved streets, and aesthetics are part of it. Yes, aesthetics is part of this, but there's reduced city services here. It's a gravel road. It is, and it's been maintained ditches through here. And I think that the plans do change. I agree with the logic and their request, and I still say that we should approve the variance.
Thank you. Well, Council, this is a difficult one. The challenge here is their driveway is so very wide, so they're limited to where they can actually put these trees. I mean, as Councillor Seaman said, I was part of that discussion too in 2010, and I like the idea of trees. I love seeing trees, and I don't think, in this case, I can't be convinced in my own heart that planting trees would be a hardship to the business or to the lot itself. So for that reason, I will also vote against the motion. But, so we'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that is denied. Mr. Workman, we need a motion now to deny?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so we're looking for a motion to deny. Councillor Penner? Second by Councillor Schweitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Although, yes, it may not be built up at this time, a tree planted today is only going to be more beautiful 25 years from now. So that's something that, as the city develops, as we plant our trees and improve our aesthetics and improve our services, it's only going to become a more aesthetic and beautiful entry into our city.
Nothing further.
Okay. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, Council, 6E, Conditional Use CU-2020-03, referring to 300 Bush Farm Road. It starts on page 47. At this time, we will close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Workning, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this conditional use application file CU-2020-03 for 300 Bush Farm Road. The owner of the property is Reginald and Lois Fast. The applicant for the conditional use is Prairie Memorials. Purpose of the application is to allow an advertising sign to be located on the subject property. As per zoning bylaw 2100, advertising signs within the DR1 Development Reserve 1 zone require conditional use application approval. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. There is no written correspondence on file. Recommendation from administration is that City Council approve conditional use application on the condition that the owner remove the sign upon either redevelopment or rezoning of the subject property.
Thank you, Mr. Workning. Is the applicant here today? Okay, seeing the applicant's not here, is there anyone here with questions or objection to this file? I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone here with questions or objections? Okay, we will now close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Penner?
Motion to approve.
Second by Councillor Hiebert. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is going to be a standalone sign that they're applying to put up on their property. As far as the rendering looks, it's quite aesthetically pleasing. The only unfortunate thing about it is it sends people west away from the city instead of having that wonderful business located within our city boundaries. But I don't see any reason why we shouldn't approve this.
Anything further?
Not really.
Anything further of council? Go ahead.
Just one comment, using the logic from the previous hearing, we should vote against it because they aren't here.
It's not a variance, not a variance, totally different. Nice try.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing?
Nothing further.
Council, call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, council, we'll go to 6F, the Conditional Use CU-2020-04, the digital sign. This is referring to 160 PTH 12 North. It's found on page 58 of our package. At this time, we will close the council meeting and open the public hearing. Mr. Workteam, how would you like to proceed?
Mr. Mayor and members of council, this conditional use application file CU-2020-04 for 160 PTH 12 North. The owner of the property is McDonald's Restaurants of Canada LTD, with the applicant for the conditional use being Priority Permits LTD. Purpose of the application is to allow a digital advertising sign to be located on the subject property. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. There is no written correspondence on file. There is in your agenda package on page 66 showing the proposed location and general signage that is being planned. Recommendation from administration is that council approve the application.
Thank you, Mr. Workteam. Is the applicant here today? Okay, the applicant appears not to be here. Is there anyone here with questions or objections for this file? I will ask one more time. Is there anyone here with questions or objections for this file? Okay, seeing none, we will now close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Hiebert?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay. Do we have a seconder by Councillor Swagstra? Go ahead, Councillor Hiebert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an application to replace an existing sign. It's a sign that's going to go on the existing pedestal, and although it might be slightly larger, it's in the same place as the existing sign is. There's been no registered objections. There's no objections here today, and there's nothing to indicate that this sign will negatively impact the surrounding area.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Swagstra?
No.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing? Call for the question. Oh, Councillor Siemens, you had a question? Call for the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, council, we will go to the last public hearing of the night, 6G. This is Variance V-2020-25, referring to 110 PTH 12 North. It's on page 68 of our packet. At this time, we will close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Workteam, could you please introduce this file?
Mr. Mayor, this application for variance file V-2020-25 for 110 PTH 12 North. The owner of the subject property is 100-27732 Manitoba, Inc., with the application, or the applicant for the variance being Lowen Henderson Banman Legault LLP. Purpose of the variance application is to allow front yard setback for residential buildings within the CMX commercial mixed-use zone to be 10 feet from the required 25 feet. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. There is no written correspondence on file. With respect to the subject property, this was subject to a previous consideration by council for both a rezoning and redesignation and approval of a secondary plan. The recommendation from administration is for council to approve the variance application for parcels B and G as noted in the application, subject to any new evidence being provided at the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Workteam. Is the applicant here today? Do you wish to speak?
I do.
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. David Banman. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, 1002773 Manitoba, Inc. We're going to be here on 3 different issues today, but the first one is the conditional use, or excuse me, variance for the residential sector of this portion. I think part of the reason we're here today is that the CMX zoning is a little bit quirky in that all the commercial component of this development, there is a 0 setback, front yard setback for the commercial, but residential is subject to what would normally be traditional setback rules for multifamily, which is 25 feet. As you can see here, we're wanted to do something a little bit different. We have an open canvas, so our thought here is to bring the buildings a little closer to the property line, especially the multifamily component, obviously, and put the parking in the back. And one of the things that I dislike the most when I drive through and see multifamily properties is you don't focus your attention on the building. It's all the other things in front. So there's usually a parking lot. There's a good reason for that in a residential area, but in this area we are starting from scratch. So we have a really good opportunity for a little bit different aesthetic here, and I think that's really what we're asking for. I believe that's maybe the end of my presentation. If anybody does have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I have a question for the applicant. So really what you're asking for, this won't be fronting on any of city streets. This 10-foot setback, that's on an internal street in the Millbrook itself.
Correct. It will be on an internal street, and the idea is the street's going to be a little narrower than a regular city street per se, but there won't be any parking on that street as well. So we're definitely going for a different aesthetic, and I don't think, since there's really no neighbors, it's not something where I don't think they'll have a problem with how it'll look in the neighborhood. And I understand in an existing neighborhood, you don't want one house 5 foot back from the street and the other one 25 feet back. It'll look very strange, but like I said, here it's more of an open canvas, so it allows us to do something a little bit different on that internal street.
Thank you. Council, any questions for the applicant? Okay. Are there any?
I have one question. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
For you. Further to what the mayor just asked you, the frontage on an internal private lane, how do you differentiate from that from a public roadway? I know the difference, but is this internal public road or internal private lane, is it going to have a street name, like a city street name?
Yes.
Or in what way? How does it differ then from a regular, other than you've said there's going to be no parking?
I think there's a bunch of different ways to deal with it. We would prefer to have an actual street name just for civic addressing. So for example, if somebody gets their mail, they actually have a street address, or if a police or fire call has to go to a certain particular part of this development, it's much easier to say, for example, it's going to be 6 Millbrook Drive or 6 Millbrook Boulevard, rather than Unit 7, Number 7, 110 PTH 12. It's just, it makes it a little bit easier that way. And we are treating, for setback purposes here, we are treating each of these pieces of property as if they're coming off a public road. So that's why we're asking for this variance here.
So when you, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
So when you say it's an internal private lane, is the city still going to be responsible for clearing it and sweeping it and other amenities?
No, it's strictly private. All the services that will be coming in through here will be private services. So snow clearing, landscaping, maintenance, that sort of thing will all be privately taken care of.
I appreciate that. So that's, I understand the difference between what you designate a private lane and a public one.
And I think you'll see when the subdivision comes through in a couple of items from now, you'll be able to actually see how we're planning on doing that.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay. Is there anyone here with questions or objections to this file? I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone here with questions or objections to this file? Okay, seeing none. We will now, at this time, we will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Swagstra?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion to approve the variance.
Okay. seconded by Councillor Siemens. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a very exciting development, and I appreciate the thought that the applicant is putting into how they want to develop. I mean, this is going to be a whole new community, in a sense, within our city with this mix of commercial and mixed use. And in terms of the variance itself, as we've noted, as has been noted, administration is recommending approval. And it's important to note as well that this area has not been developed yet. So asking for a variance prior to it being developed and is not affecting any neighbors in the area, I mean, that's one of the key reasons why there aren't any objections or any concerns that are being raised, because this is all going into the initial planning. And I appreciate the explanation that Mr. Bamman gave as far as that commercial can go right up to the edge, but residential is 25 feet back, and proposing that actually in this particular context here, it makes more sense to move it closer to the street, so that way there could be parking in the back. I think those are reasonable explanations, and I appreciate the answers, and I'm looking forward to seeing this development go ahead.
Anything further, Councillor Siemens?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think as well to echo some of the same comments, but it is exciting to see a new development and how they're developing and how it'll be unique within our city, and I think that is important. I do think that having seen some of these style developments in the city of Winnipeg, it is, I think it's a good direction, and it is kind of a new look for our community, and we need to improve it.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing?
No.
Well, council, I will definitely support the motion. I think this is a great idea, and I think what's going to happen here is bringing these properties forward to a 10 feet setback is going to make it more consistent with the entire plan. So everything's going to look a little more, it'll be with the private road and everything close to the road. It's just going to be a nice aesthetic feel. And with parking in the rear, we won't notice the parking. And I agree with the presenter. He says when you see multifamily and you see parking in the front, it kind of messes everything up. And I think this is a really, really good idea. And because it's a private road, it doesn't really affect anything in the public city. So I think this is great. And I'm great that they're having the foresight beforehand. Mr. Worthing, you had a question?
Yes, I apologize, Mr. Mayor, for bringing this up so late, but just wanted to raise just a point insofar as the order of approval. After such an eloquent closing, I'm a little ashamed of having interrupted, but given that the actual subdivision to which this variance particularly relates and the two particular lots has not been addressed by council yet, but is scheduled for a later item in this agenda. I would just request that council's decision on this variance be delayed until the decision on the subdivision is completed after 9E.
Okay, so after 9E, we come back to this?
Yes.
So can we just recess this and?
Well, the public hearing is already closed.
Okay.
It's just a matter of bringing it back for an actual vote after the subdivision for this particular development has been dealt with.
Okay, council, we'll be making the vote on this after the, after we've dealt with 9E at this time.
Please.
Okay. Okay, council, let's move to, okay, we have no delegation, no reports and recommendations from city manager. We'll move to 9A, accounts payable. It's in the back of the book. Council, we've had time to look at it. We're looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Hiebert, second by Councillor Hiebert. Any comments?
No comment.
No comment from here, Your Honor.
Question, all those in favor? That is carried. We've got the financial statements ending September 30th, 2020, also in the back of the book. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Siemens, second by Councillor Penner. Any comments?
Sir.
Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, we've got 9C, we got bylaw 2162, street naming. We'll be taking care of first and second reading tonight. That is on page 78. Mr. Worthing, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This The street renaming bylaw relates to a road opening that City Council has dealt with earlier this year. And it does relate to the Millbrook Market mixed-use development. The public lane, a short section, was actually opened, which intersects with PTH 12 North, and the road renaming to Millbrook Market, to Millbrook Boulevard, is contained within bylaw 2162. Recommendation is for council to give this bylaw first and second reading. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I stand corrected. It should be called Market Boulevard.
Market Boulevard?
My mistake.
Okay, council, looking for a motion to approve the street naming to Market Boulevard. Councillor Schweitzer, second by Councillor Penner. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't sure about Millbrook Market. Sounds great, so we should definitely go with naming it Market Boulevard.
Okay, anything further?
No, that's everything.
Anything further from council? Anything closing? Okay, we'll call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, we have 9D. Oh, no, we'll go back into second reading, sorry. So the motion to approve second reading, Councillor Hiebert, second by Councillor Penner. Any comments? Nothing.
My comment is Market Boulevard sounds like a really good name for the place.
Anything further of council? Anything closing?
No, thank you.
Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, we will go to 9D, Millbrook Market, 445-2020-8340. This starts on page 82. Mr. Workney, would you please introduce this subdivision?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this subdivision file, as you mentioned, for Millbrook Market at 110 PTH 12 North, seeks to create 7 parcels, 6 of which are to be used for mixed-use development, and the 7th parcel, which is parcel A, will serve as an internal roadway for the development. The recommendation from administration is that council approve this subdivision application, and the required developments for the development have previously been completed.
Hey, council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Schweitzer,
Make the motion to approve.
we have a seconder. Councillor Penner, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, because I think our previous comments on the variance largely touch on this. I mean, I'm excited to see this go ahead, and I'm looking forward to seeing this subdivision completed.
Okay. Anything further?
Nothing further?
Anything further of council? Anything in closing?
No.
Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, council, we'll go to 9E. This is Millbrook Market 4451-2020-8341. It starts on page 104 of our package. Mr. Workney, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and again, as mentioned, you provided the subdivision file number also for Millbrook Market at 110 PTH 12 North. This subdivision application file is related particularly to, I believe, parcel B in the previous subdivision file. And the purpose for this application is to create 3 separate multifamily residential lots, which is consistent with the Millbrook Market secondary plan. Recommendation from administration is for council to approve this application.
Okay, council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Penner?
Motion to approve?
Councillor Siemens, seconder. Go ahead, Councillor Penner.
I have nothing to add.
Anything further? Anything further of council? Nothing closing. Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, council, now that we've taken care of 9E and all the subdivisions, we can go back to 6G, to the Variance V-2020-25. That is the 10-foot varying from 25 to 10 feet in frontage. We had a motion, we did everything, now we're just asking for the question, right? Call for the question, all those in favor? That is carried, thank you. Okay, council, we are back at 9F. This is the bylaw 2158. This is the code of conduct that we dealt with last week. And this is, we're going for second and third reading. We're looking for a motion for second reading. Councillor Swagstra,
I'll make the motion for second reading.
second by Councillor Hiebert. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, we had discussed this at the previous meeting. This is in response to a directive from the province in regards to councils updating their codes of conduct, and so we are updating ours, also keeping some of our previous code of conduct in here, talking about conflict of interest. And so I think that this version here is a good one, and it makes sense for us to pass it.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing?
No.
Yes, council, this is the amended code of conduct. We talked about removing the committee part, and so that's been taken out now. And so now this is the code of conduct as we've agreed on. So we'll call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, council, we'll go directly into third reading. Looking for a motion for third reading. Councillor Hiebert, second by Councillor Hiebert.
Nothing further to add, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Nothing to add.
Okay. Well, then we'll go directly into the question. Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Council question period. Is there any questions of council? Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To administration through you.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Mr. Workington, to your knowledge, and I apologize for catching on the spot here, is there rules and regulations, be it through transportation or otherwise, with regards to digital signage by roads that an applicant would need to adhere to before?
Yes, there is particular to digital signage. There are provisions within the City of Steinbach zoning bylaw. I cannot recall the actual section, but there is a general section on signage. Generally, the primary consideration is its particular location in reference to or in proximity of an intersection. But there are other conditions, but they would be listed. I can provide that for you.
Okay. To your recollection, has there ever been a digital sign that has been denied as a conditional use?
I can't recall.
Okay.
I can research that as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions of council? Okay, seeing none. There are no correspondence and petitions. No other business. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Siemens. Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, council, our organizational meeting, that will be next Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020 at 7 p.m. and then followed by our regular council meeting that day at 7:30. Okay, thank you.
What was denied?
Guy wanted to put a sign